What's up, everybody? We are back with Against the Spread, the college edition podcast. Got my boy Rich and Beej with me. How's everybody doing?
Doing good, baby. Doing good.
We're
Ready for
doing
rivalry
good.
week.
I know
Yeah, rivalry week.
Beej got you a little 24-ounce Natty Light, don't you?
25 ouncer.
Yep.
Don't short me an ounce, bud. Don't
Okay,
short
I'm
me
sorry,
an
buddy. I'm sorry. Huge week, man. I knew a lot of stuff happened last week. Some of them predicted, some of them not. I don't think anybody saw New Mexico State coming in and beating Auburn. But I will say I did have New Mexico State plus 24.5. Thought that was a really, really good bet by me. Obviously didn't take it on the pod. We'll get to those later. But let's go ahead and head on into our recap of last week. So first game I wanted to talk about, Michigan and Maryland. Pretty big game, obviously, for Michigan, just to kind of see how their offense is rolling. Are they doing well without the so-called sign-stealing operation going on? How's everything? How's everybody adjusting? How are they doing without Jim Harbaugh? I don't think we actually have really talked about it much, about Jim Harbaugh being suspended for the 3 games. So initially, he wanted to, sue the Big Ten and tell them they couldn't do that to him. And then guess what? After some more evidence came out, he said, "You know what? I'll take the 3 games. No problem. No problem. I'll be out. See ya. See you back in 3.
Yep.
No problem." So kind of
Then
looks
on
like
top
a little
of
bit of
that,
evidence.
Zach, did they not fire a linebacker coach as well?
Yeah, for not cooperating with the investigation, which kind of also makes you be like, okay, well, obviously he knows a little bit and didn't want to divulge the information that he had. So that doesn't look too great for Michigan. As I've said the whole time we've been doing this podcast, don't love Michigan. I think they're a bunch of frauds. I really wanted to cuss just now. Don't want to mess up the algorithm though. But yeah, we're gonna hop into this one. I think the main thing for me is I think Michigan's offense is super bland. I also think that on the opposite side of that, their defense is amazing. I think they had two what are they? How many turnovers did they have? 2 turnovers?
Three at least.
Yeah, 2 interceptions, 2
turnovers?
safeties, and a defensive touchdown. So, I mean,
just amazing by that defense, which and like your point, Brennan, just amazing how that defense kept them in that game. Because if you look at their offense, they just look lethargic. They don't look like they're moving the ball. Then you see, okay, now they're moving the ball, and then they go away with what was working. And I just think that I don't know, how can you win a Joe Moore Award if you don't trust your offensive line to protect your quarterback for enough time against Maryland to get him to throw the ball? I think he was like around 50% passing, 12 for 23 or something like that.
Barely above 50%. He was bad.
Yeah,
really bad.
Just a really bad game by the offense. But I'll shoot it over to you, Brennan. What were your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I mean, J.J. McCarthy, 12 for 23, 140 yards, and 1 interception. That is not very good. I would really like to see – I'm glad they're finally playing somebody that's worth – I mean, Penn State, yeah, awful game by them. But, I mean, I really want to see what Michigan looks like from behind. I want to see Ohio State go up 10-0 real quick and see what J.J. McCarthy can do because, I mean, good Lord, everybody hyped him up so much, was like, oh, J.J. McCarthy, Heisman. And then look what he's done these last 3 games. I mean, hasn't done crap. So, I mean, I would love to see how they play from behind. Yes, that defense is incredible. I mean, they allow 9 points per game, which, granted, I'll continue to say they haven't really played anyone yet. So, yeah, I mean, I would like to see them play from behind. Defense is stout, but that offense has got to get something going. I just don't see them coming back down against an Ohio State defense that's just as good. So I'm looking forward to that matchup. Another stat I had, I just want to throw this out on Maryland. Poor guys. 0-34 against ranked Big Ten opponents since they've joined the league. Just awful. I mean, yeah. And, it feels like every year they're playing great games against these teams. It's like every year I feel like Maryland's on the verge of upsetting one of these teams, and then they just fail to do so. I mean, they got down to that last drive. Very questionable call on the intentional grounding safety that screwed them out of that final drive. But tough loss for the old Maryland Tarps. But excited to see what Michigan's got ahead of them against Ohio State.
Yeah, Beach, and to your point a second ago, I want to see how JJ McCarthy does against top tier talent or how they play from behind, because I don't think with how he's playing they can play from behind. I don't think that's possible. I think, last week I was all on the fact that they had to beat Penn State that certain way, right? I was all on, okay, they realized they had to beat them physically, so they just beat them physically. I don't think now watching this game they can do that. I think JJ McCarthy has some major flaws that they're actually scared of exposing. And I think that, that's going to come to fruition when they play Ohio State this week. I mean, they're going to have to play. I think they're going to have to play from behind at some point against Ohio State. I mean, it's such a close game that you can't imagine them just jumping out to a lead and holding the lead the whole game, right? I mean, even though it's at Michigan, I think JJ McCarthy's going to have to throw the ball at some point. He's not going to be able to hide behind his offensive line and throw the ball 8 times like he did against Penn State, or be average 12 from 23 like he was against Maryland. I think he's going to actually have to throw meaningful passes. And I think based off his last 2 or 3 performances, he's going to get exposed. And, this was kind of a sign of it. He let his defense carry him and his rush game. Corum's amazing. Corum is one of the best backs in football. But I don't think that Michigan can compete against these upper level teams, which we're talking upper level, like upper echelon, like college football, Georgia, any of these teams that can make a playoff. Ohio State, even if he has to throw the ball 23 times like he did against Maryland, I just don't think he played well enough to do that.
Yeah, and that's also a huge topic that I know we're going to bring up later. Is just how is Michigan going to be able to fare against these other teams, especially Ohio State when they play them. Let's move on to another game that we had. Kind of a lot of people had a couple eyes on this one. We had Louisville and Miami game. I really do like Louisville's offense. I think their offense is extremely productive. I love the balance that they have. I don't think that Miami's the team that everyone thought they were going to be this year, obviously, but Miami has a really, really good secondary, especially in their safety positions. And that's super exciting to see. But when you see Louisville kind of carve them up like they did, I love the schemes they had. I know that one run they had, or the one pass that they had, those 2 Miami players hit each other, and Louisville kind of took it to the house. So we're gonna kind of go through this one a little quickly, but I think they played great against the Miami DBs. Brennan, you have anything on this one?
Yeah, no, shout out Louisville clinching their first ACC championship appearance. Head coach Jeff Brom, man, shout out to him. He led Purdue Boilermakers to the Big Ten West champs last season. Pops into Louisville, his alma mater, and brings him to the ACC championship first season. So that's impressive. Shout out to him. Learning all that today. Look out for him for one of these big head coaching jobs. I know Louisville's his alma mater, but for a guy that just took Purdue to a Big Ten West championship last year, pops into the ACC with Louisville and takes them to their first ACC championship. That's a guy you got to look at in one of these coaching jobs we talked about last week. But yeah, Jack Plummer playing it out, man. 24 for 37, 308 yards and 3 TDs against that quality secondary you were talking about, Zach, and 12 different receivers caught the ball in that game. Yeah. Very impressive. They used their entire team. So 100, I'll say this, I saw this, 176 voters in the ACC preseason poll, not a single one took Louisville to make it to the ACC championship. So shout out to them. Let's hope they take down Florida State in that championship and kick their ass out of the playoff.
That's just coming from a fucking Bama fan. Look, I will say this about this game, though. I think Louisville finally played a matchup where I was like, damn, they're pretty good. Because if you look at this Miami roster, right, they were top, I believe, 20, maybe top 15. And for them to actually, take out a roster way better than theirs. I hadn't heard shit about Louisville's roster before this. shows something. I mean, and Plummer came to play, so Louisville could be pretty scary, I think, against a Florida State team, especially without their QB. But congrats to them for making the ACC championship, doing something that nobody thought they could. And by the way, the ACC voters aren't very good. They picked Tech to be, I think, last, and Tech's not even close to last. But that's a different rant that I have about the whole ACC.
Well, you also don't expect
but no,
Clemson to go 6-4, so
yeah,
it's pretty easy
exactly,
to pick Clemson
right?
every season in the ACC. But
they said Clemson, Florida State, and then they weren't even close.
Yeah.
So but really, congratulations to Louisville for beating a team with a much better roster. I think this is one of their more quality wins.
Agreed.
But they actually have a chance against Florida State, which before this game I didn't think. Even without their quarterback now, I thought Louisville just has a way inferior roster, so they couldn't beat Florida State. But now it's game on.
Yeah.
Could be a toss-up game, yeah, for sure. I think that Louisville has a good chance now, especially with how their quarterback is playing. And we don't really know much about Florida State yet with their new quarterback. So let's head on to this next game. We got Oregon State, Washington. This was a big game we were thinking about, obviously. The spread was really thin. I know it was Oregon State -1. I took Oregon State -1. I thought they were going to win this one in a close one. I thought that it was going to be I thought the rain was really going to get to Washington's offense. And although I think it really did, I don't think Penix's numbers were out of this world astronomical. I don't think that their running back had an insane game. I think it was a very mediocre game from both players. But I also think that Oregon State's defense didn't do enough when it came down to it, and Washington just capitalized on certain things. I think Oregon State had 2 interceptions, and Washington also caused a fumble. So these things happen in these kind of rainy games. I know I heard from someone who was watching the game at the game, that the raindrops were like quarter sized. They were just huge. The rain was really getting to everybody. And if you wanted to stand on the sidelines, it was freezing cold. Couldn't even feel your hands. So can't hate on Washington's offense not producing as much as they usually do. Obviously, it's a high-powered offense. They still did sling the ball when they needed to. And Oregon State just shot themselves in the foot. And I think that happens sometimes when you got an inferior team going against another team. And when the weather comes into it, you'd think a team that is more pass dominant, that they would kind of fail, but it didn't seem to go that way for Washington. They won 22-20 in a close one. Brennan, what do you think about this one?
Yeah, man, I know Rich and I dove deep into just all we had to do here is control the clock and don't turn over the ball. And I'll tell you, they did one of those. Oregon State had the ball for 37.5 minutes to Washington's 22.5 minutes, which was a crazy stat to me. But horrible on third down, 3 for 12 on third down, then had a fumble lost and 2 interceptions. And then they also had a safety due to a bad snap on a punt. So it's like all the things that could have went wrong for them went wrong, and they still only lost this game by 2 points. So, I mean, you take away just 1 or 2 of those mistakes, you probably see a win here. But, I mean, you got to give credit to Washington where it's due, going on the road in those weather conditions, classic Pac-12 weather conditions there, and just making the plays when it mattered. Truthfully, I mean, to see that they had the ball that much less than Oregon State blew my mind. So it just proves that they were the better team in this matchup and were able to pull the game out doing that. So,
dude, their offense moves. Their offense moves quick.
Yeah.
They're quick. It doesn't matter. I don't think time of possession really matters when it comes to Washington's offense. You can't really take that into factor or into consideration because their offense is just so explosive. I mean, they could score in 1-2 plays like they did against Oregon to win that game. So it's tough with Washington.
No, and I think Oregon State did everything we said that they had to do to win. And I think the issue was it was raining, so their quarterback had a couple of turnovers that were unfortunate. But, I really, really liked the way that Washington played that game, even though they ended up slipping in the second half. I think the weather finally got to them. Their offense looked gorgeous in the first half. In the first half, their offense looked like regular Washington, like the rain didn't affect them, which was crazy to me. but their defense stepped up in the second half, and they didn't let themselves get pushed around by a team that, is going to run the ball. We thought was going to be able to run the ball. And, that was probably the entire speech before the game. It was like, hey, we're running the ball, we're running the ball, we're running the ball, we're running the ball. Just shove it down their throats, and they can't stop it. And Washington didn't relent. They didn't give up. So, props to Washington for finding out a way to win in a rainy game where, at a top 10 teams, they're away. So, it's really interesting. They found a way to win and hang on in a spot where a lot of people, I think a majority of money even, was on Oregon State to win and cover, which is even crazier to me. That Washington's had this great season, and people were expecting Oregon State to cover and then win. So,
and a name that I'd like to bring up that I know he's been brought up a few times over the last few weeks, but Romeo Dunze for Washington, that wide receiver, dude. Look out for him in the draft.
He's
dude.
playing with little fucking boys, man. He's playing with little boys.
That guy is a stud, man.
Yeah,
dude, the wide receiver class this year is it's insane.
Questionably better than the quarterback class. When we get to our draft,
know, dude.
Like,
I think that you gotta, dude. The quarterback class is crazy. The wide receiver class is crazy. Think about Troy Franklin, Roma Dunze. You got Keon Coleman. You got Marvin Harrison Jr. Of course.
Xavier Worthy for Texas.
Xavier Worthy, Adonai Mitchell.
Yeah.
I mean Adonai Mitchell. I mean there's so many players this year that could go onto a team and just instantly make an impact. So I'm so excited to see what guys go to what teams and how offenses are changed, because the wide receiver class last year was great for the first round. Maybe there was a couple stragglers in the backgrounds that kind of shot through as well that have produced this year. But dude, just like the beginning of the draft this year, first and second round is going to be littered with wide receivers and quarterbacks.
Yep.
Wide receivers and quarterbacks are going to get taken. Running backs going to be, I think, 2 running backs are going to get taken in the first 2 rounds. Maybe
franchise changing receivers could be drafted. Think about that.
Of course.
Like receivers.
And there were some last year. Like, imagine if Houston gets another receiver, like an X. Like, I know Nico Collins is extremely good for Houston, and I don't want to dive too much into NFL, but imagine if Houston gets another receiver like a Troy Franklin, dude. It's just, I just think the offenses could be crazy next year. Fantasy football is going to be a really, really good time. But let's head on into the college football playoff. I'm so excited to talk about this. I know we haven't dove into it too much with each other.
Before we dive in, everybody sees Beej with this fucking Alabama jersey on, no? Everybody sees this. Everybody sees this. Here we go. All right, now we can start with what we got. Yeah, well, that was a given.
Okay, so we're gonna go with the college football playoff committee. What they had at number 1, they had Georgia, 2 Ohio State, 3 Michigan, and 4 with the curveball they put in Washington. And everyone can assume that is because of Florida State's quarterback Jordan Travis getting hurt. So that kind of falls into exactly why Washington moved up into number 4 with against the spreads picks for our top 4. This was a tough one, guys. I'm gonna be honest. We argued about this for a little while before we got on to the pod. Not the first 2, obviously. I think we have Georgia 1, Ohio State 2. I think that's very obvious. Now, 3 and 4 have been tough for us because, we're ranking these people of how we think they look right now and what they're doing in the current moment, okay? How they're playing right now, what their offense looks like, what their defense looks like, what the team as a whole looks like. And we're going to have the exact same thing we had last week. We're not going to change a thing. We're going to go Oregon at 3, and we're going to go Michigan at 4. This was tough, dude. We argued about this for a while. And I think the reason why we argued so much about this is because there's so much talent at the top, right? There's so much talent at the top. We didn't have Florida State in. We haven't had them in. I think that they're a really good team, but along with what I was saying earlier in the season and a couple podcasts ago, I don't think their offense is as dynamic as they are made out to be by the media. I think that their offense is is good, but it's not electric. It doesn't shock you. They don't have great schemes. They're very fade ball, guessy post. It doesn't really surprise me what they're doing. Okay. They have Keon Coleman and Wilson. Okay. Those are their guys. They're throwing to them. Just cover them. I mean, that's pretty much what you got to do. Other than that, they have pretty mediocre guys at the running back position and their slot. So that's just my opinion on it. I know we also have Michigan at 4. I think Michigan's offense has looked lethargic the past 2 weeks. And is that because their coach is not there? Is that because they don't know what the defense that they're going against is doing anymore because they're not stealing signs? What is it, right? We don't know.
Yep.
We don't know. We don't know why they've looked so lethargic and why their offense hasn't produced like it has beforehand. But it's looked pretty bad. Oregon, Bo Nix had 6 touchdowns in the first half and 380 yards passing. The offense looks explosive. Their team looks phenomenal. I don't give a shit who they played. They're playing great football right now.
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong, I think Washington's playing really, really good too at the moment. And they're at 4 in the College Football Playoff Committee's rankings. And I don't think that's a mistake on their part. I just think that in our eyes, we think that Oregon looks better right now. If you take record aside when it comes to they've played head-to-head and who Oregon has played. Now, Brennan, I know that you want to talk a couple points on Oregon's strength of schedule and who they've played.
I was high on Oregon earlier in the season, and I still do think they are a very good football team. Like, I would put them in my top 4 if you're talking like at the end of the season, when the way I think the season's going to play out, assuming my assumption is they're going to beat Washington when they're playing on a neutral field in the Pac-12 championship. But I mean, at this point, they just haven't really they haven't beat a ranked team. Now that Utah dropped out, they haven't beat a ranked team. They lost on the road to Washington, tough loss. But I mean, to me, they haven't necessarily had to prove themselves yet. Yes, they have beat the teams they're supposed to beat by the amount of points they're supposed to beat them by. But I mean, just straight, if you're looking at the College Football Playoff Committee's decisions and their decision, biased as I may sound, to keep Alabama all the way down at 8 and not move them an inch since we've absolutely dominated people the last few weeks. Like, I mean, just absolutely dominated people. It's just, and I'm fine with Texas ahead of us, but why should Oregon be ahead of these teams?
Where would you
put Alabama? Agreed.
I couldn't say I'd put them in the top 4. I'd have them right at 5 probably.
Would you put them above Texas?
I mean, in a perfect world, yes. I think we have played much better football than Texas since they beat us. Like, you're crazy to tell me if you think Texas and Alabama played right now, do you think Texas would beat Alabama again?
I think it'd be a close game again.
I think here's what I think about Texas. I think Texas finds ways to win. Necessarily, do they blow people out? No, but I think they're good enough to beat people. And that's all fun and games until you don't beat somebody. You can beat whoever the fuck you want, but if you find ways to win, that's all that matters. You know. I mean,
also, my other thing, I totally agree with the College Football Playoff Committee on putting Washington in. I mean, I think they're well deserved to be in it at this point. I mean, they just went on the road, won a big game against a number 11 ranked team in the country in terrible conditions. So I think they're well deserved to be at number 4 spot at this point. But also, I mean, these are all subject to change. Obviously, Ohio State, Michigan have to play this weekend. One of them's going to lose. One of them's out. Oregon has to play Washington. One of them's in. One of them's out. But yeah, it depends. The bottom dollar, I think, like we were talking about this before the pod, bottom take is I think everybody's just under the assumption that Georgia's going to beat Alabama in the SEC championship. So it's like, why move them at this point? But I think it will shock some people if Bama does happen to shock Georgia and they jump from number 8 all the way to number 4 or number 3 in the country. Because that would be, you can't say that wouldn't be the best win in college football all season. I mean, Georgia is just absolutely.
It'd be one of the best wins in college football history.
It would be the best win of the season by far. I think what's tough is when we're ranking these 3, 4, 5 teams, we've held Oregon so high because of how they have played and because of the eye test that we've had. Now, would it be unfair of us to put Washington in and take Michigan or Oregon out? I don't think so, because I don't think And it's tough because it's what do we put emphasis on as our Against the Spread podcast, right? What do we put emphasis on? College Football Playoff Committee is putting other things in emphasis that we aren't, right? So we're putting strength of schedule, a little bit lower than the College Football Playoff Committee. We're putting the eye test a lot higher. And I think that's evident. I think that we all, and I know it's such a hard discussion to going to go through. And I don't think you're being too biased, Brennan, when you say that Alabama has played really well, because they have. And if this was like a perfect world and I was going on strictly
I'd put Alabama above Michigan if we're going on based off of eye tests, like 100%.
If we're going strictly eye test, I think we do put Bama in, but we're not strictly going on eye test, right? We are eye test guys, but we're not strictly going off of that because it doesn't make a lot of sense. But I think Oregon is the better team right now between them and Washington. I think Oregon ultimately beats Washington. And I think Oregon deserves a ranking. Now, could we put them at 4? Yeah, we could put them at 4 and put Michigan at 3. But I think 3 and 4 are very interchangeable. And I think Washington could also be in the top 4. Mm-hmm. So it's tough to kind of rank these teams. And if you don't like how we ranked them and you're a commenter, rank them yourself and tell us why you think you did better. I don't give a shit. It's tough to rank these teams because it's a hard process. And now you kind of, if you put yourself in the shoes of the committee and kind of what we've been doing, and we're only ranking the top 4, we're not even doing top 25. It's a tough job because not everyone's going to be on your side.
This is easily the hardest year to rank teams since the college football playoff has become a thing. I mean, we haven't had this many teams this close to where there's a chance where you're going to have 4 teams to pick from to fill that 4th spot.
The issue is it's never this many Power 5 teams. It's always okay, you got 3 good Power 5 teams, and you got a fucking Air Force or something coming in out of nowhere.
2 years ago, Cincinnati made it.
Yeah, but I also think that,
you can't see me, John Cena type shit coming in from number 12.
I feel like that was a test a little bit, or more of I think maybe more of a slap in the face for committee to the college football world, and because they were getting pushed so heavy that year. Put Cincinnati in, and they're dominant as fuck. They're dominant. Okay, you want Cincinnati to get in? Go ahead and go fucking play Alabama and get your fucking ass beat all over the field. Get your ass beat the whole game. Make it not enjoyable. And then guess what? We're never going to put them in again. We're never going to put a team like that in again because we wanted to show you why these guys are not on the same level. They're not.
I'll tell you this right now.
5.
Yeah.
If Alabama beats Georgia in the SEC championship and somehow still gets left out, they're going to ruin the whole preface of what does it mean to schedule strong out of conference games? Because
Brennan,
at this point,
they wouldn't do
no
that.
one's going to ever.
That would make zero sense.
Just listen to everybody talk.
Have you seen
I have not heard one person say if Bama beats Georgia, they're not getting in. Not one person.
They're still questioning it. They're still
I'm questioning it. I'm questioning it because have you seen how they rank SEC teams out of this top 4? They're overrating a lot of the SEC teams. I think Missouri is way too high. I think Missouri jumped Penn State for almost no reason.
Okay, Missouri plays Penn State. They beat them by 2 touchdowns, probably 10 points at least.
I don't agree with that. I don't. I think if Missouri plays Penn State, that game is a 3 line. The line is 3.
The line is 3. I think that Missouri
line
wins
is
by
3,
10 or more.
maybe 3, maybe Penn State. Think that they beat them by 2 touchdowns?
Penn State's offense cannot move the ball. They
against
cannot move
Michigan.
The ball. Their quarterback
against
is bad.
Michigan. Which Michigan
we would
all agree has a top 5 defense. Do you think Missouri has a top 20 defense?
I don't think you watched the Georgia-Missouri game if you don't think that Missouri's front 7 is fucking good because they sacked Georgia more than anybody has sacked Georgia in the past 3 years. And you don't do that against a great offensive line like that with fucking 5 stars all over it.
We'll call it great, but we got to wait till the SEC championship to see if it's even great.
Then they turned around and beat the shit out of Tennessee next week.
See if who's great.
But then they turn around after that, Brennan, and fucking almost lose to Florida. So what is Missouri?
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I'll say this.
And we can all agree Florida is not a good football team.
Yeah, at the end of the day, there's there's a reason why there's an SEC bias in every year's decision, because look who wins the national championship year in, year out. I mean, I think I talked about this last week. We did the math. I mean, in the last since Nick Saban got hired at Alabama, I mean, Florida was winning.
That's when you started watching college football.
I mean, yeah, because I was like 8 years old, 9 years old. I mean, I couldn't understand it until then, you know. I mean, if I'm a little 5-year-old running around, ooh, roll tide, I didn't know what the fuck I was talking about. But I think we've probably won 75 to 80% of the national championships in the last 20 years, if I had to guess. So there's a reason why you want those teams in the college football playoff, and there's a reason why Michigan goes into the playoff every year and gets their ass beat. The only teams that have competed outside of Georgia and Alabama is Clemson and Ohio State. I mean, year in year, those are the only other two programs that have competed for and won a national championship. Yep. And I'll throw Oregon in there back when they had Marcus Mariota. But I mean, year in, year out, there's a reason why they want these teams in the top four. It might get boring, but they test out. Oh, let's throw Cincinnati in. Oh, they test out. Say if, Florida State this year. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Let's throw TCU in. Obviously,
TCU beat Michigan at least.
So because they figured out Michigan was stealing their signs.
Yeah,
well, they were cross-signing them.
What's funny is TCU is the only team Michigan did not go scout.
Yeah.
Before the playoff, they didn't expect them.
Look what happened to TCU against Georgia. I mean,
so let me give my opinion of these top four. I think we're pretty spot on. I think I said this before the podcast when we were texting. I wish we could just put Georgia, Ohio State / Michigan, Oregon / Washington, and then Florida State at 4.
Yeah.
Because if there's no way if Florida State goes undefeated, you leave them out.
We're not predicting the college football playoff right now. We are.
If we were predicting it, this is what I'm saying. If we were predicting, Ohio State, Michigan this week are playing in a death match. I don't give a shit what anybody says. There's no way they'll lose.
Rich, let's go ahead and put in the obvious. Let's go ahead and put Ohio State / Michigan, Oregon / Washington. Let's go ahead and just full out, just not guess at all. Just put 6 teams in our top 4 and say, fuck it. We'll see who gets in.
That's for the end of the year. Then
I mean, I do think that's funny. Is like, I mean, when you're looking at like playoff rankings each week, it's funny that you see like Ohio State and Michigan at 2 and 3 because it's like, oh yeah, cool, they're ranked that right now, but it ain't gonna be that way after this weekend. Like it doesn't.
Exactly.
These rankings don't even fucking matter at the end.
Exactly.
Of
Georgia / Alabama. There you go. Yeah. Let's make it even more confusing. Put Georgia / Alabama at 1.
Yeah. Exactly.
No, but the bigger question. Do y'all think Florida State gets in at 4 if they went out?
I think what matters is how convincing are their wins. I think they do, no matter what.
Okay, what if they do? They skate by.
They're not gonna. I think they're not gonna. If they skate by and they win by like 2-3 points each game, then
that's what they do.
Then you get into the discussion of Ohio State, Michigan, one of them loses. Let's say it's Michigan that loses. Michigan's out of the top 4. They probably move to 6-5, something like that, right?
Yep.
Then you move up Texas, and I think you might even move up Alabama in that kind of spot.
Yeah, no, they definitely move up.
I think the team that would make it ultimately over Florida State would be Texas if they win completely out. I think Texas has not blown people out, but they have looked really good lately, in my opinion. In a sense of like they're skating by these wins, but they're still winning these close games. And I think the committee looks
the same story as Washington,
how have you faced adversity and how have you overcame it? And I think that Texas has done a really good job at that, and they did it without their quarterback as well. A couple of those games, if you don't remember. So you have to look at that too when you look at Texas and why they're above Alabama. Obviously, still because of their head-to-head win against Alabama, but then you got Florida State at 5, and if they went out, I think if they went out and they, let's say they beat the shit out of Louisville, and this weekend they beat Florida. Let's say they beat Florida by 10 points, they beat Louisville by 17. They're in 100%.
Yeah.
But if they beat Florida by 35 and then they beat Florida by like 3, they beat Louisville by like 7. like a touchdown or.
Well, I mean, I really think it
I
all
think
matters.
how does it depend on how Texas does?
Yeah, I was gonna say because it matters how bad. Like, what if Oregon hardly skates by Oregon State? What if Oregon hardly skates by Washington?
Okay.
Keep Washington
what if
in,
Texas
maybe?
and then Texas? Yeah, what if Texas goes and beats the shit out of Texas Tech and then beats the hell out of?
But you would put Texas over Florida State, even though Florida State is undefeated Power 5. Undefeated.
Yeah.
It's
tough.
They don't have their quarterback.
Yeah, they don't have their starting quarterback.
That's
and
huge.
then at the top of that,
That's huge. That's huge. That's huge. It's the main guy of the team. He runs the offense. He's the main guy of the football team. You're telling me it doesn't matter if Georgia's quarterback Carson Beck got hurt, if Kyle McCord got hurt, if Bo Nix got hurt. You're telling me those teams would be the same exact teams?
Are we basing it off of merit or no? Are we basing it off of merit or no? Because Ohio State got in, I think 2 years into the college football playoff, one with fucking Cardale Jones.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Third string QB.
That's third string. Come on now.
Yeah, but didn't Cardale Jones actually perform pretty well when he came in? Like really well.
He performed the next 2 weeks, but I think they also played.
But he did really well.
Great opponents.
They also had Ezekiel Elliott and Michael Thomas. So
yeah, they also have the talent around him. Yeah, but I'm saying Florida State may have the talent around him, and if Florida State blows out these next 2 opponents, then for sure put them in. But
yeah, of course. But
if they win out and they barely win,
if they skate by, and that's
where
you
put them in.
That's where it comes into an argument, right? Because it wouldn't be an argument if they blow them out or beat them by double digits or even beat them by 7. I think if they beat both teams by 7 to 10, I still think they get in. But if they're close games and they're coming down from behind and they have to win with a last-second field goal or something like that, then that's a little confusing for the committee because then you have to think about what these other teams did. Then everything else comes into into consideration.
You don't want this.
I think the easier situation. I think the easier situation to look at is say Georgia wins SEC championship, Ohio State wins Big Ten championship. Let's say Oregon beats Washington.
Mm-hmm.
Say Florida State goes undefeated, who goes in over Oregon or Texas?
It's Texas at that point. I think Texas needs help. Texas needs help for sure.
Oregon beats Washington. Texas.
Oregon's in.
You think Oregon over Texas?
Oregon looks way more
over Alabama.
Oregon looks way better.
Yeah, we're not even arguing Oregon versus Texas. Texas needs so much help to get in the playoff. I think it's ridiculous at this point.
Yeah.
I think it is. I think you do have a valid point, Brennan, though, at arguing it because I do understand the argument. But I think Oregon gets that spot because of how they're not gonna. They've already said they look at recency. They look how good you've played recently. They don't care that you played Alabama week fucking 2 and beat them. They don't care.
Looks like they still care about it. I'll tell you that much.
No. What I'm saying is it's not going to be as high. It's not as high on their list. They're looking at recency more than anything, right? So how has Texas looked recent compared to Oregon recently?
Yeah.
I think Oregon's like leaps and bounds better than Texas recently. But I still think Texas is a great team. I think Alabama's a great team. I think Washington is. I think Oregon is. I think everybody in the top 8 are great teams.
Yeah,
that's where
I think they could all compete in the college football.
Yeah, there's just too many great teams.
I think some would match up better. I think some would match up better than others, but I don't think we're gonna have an insanely upsetting college football playoff per se as we did last year or the year before with Cincinnati in there. Like I don't think no matter what
last year's was that bad though. I think
I guess Ohio State Georgia was insane.
State Georgia game was phenomenal, and then I don't know, TCU Michigan
real quick
whatever.
Right,
TCU beat Michigan, and no one from Michigan or no one in the Big Ten thought that was going to happen. So that was surprising as well. But I don't know. It's tough. It's tough to see. But this is why we got
2 weeks left. We got 2 weeks left.
This is why we talk about it. This is why we argue. We get a lot of stuff done, and we get a lot of arguments in. But that's the fun of college football.
Mm-hmm.
Next, we're gonna have our games of the week, upcoming games that we love.
Rivalry week
of the week, man. This is rivalry week. We are so excited for this.
Coming from a Georgia Tech fan, fuck Georgia.
Thank you. Sorry, I wasn't expecting that.
What's
I
the spread on that?
couldn't fathom saying that to a team so superior. So let's just go into these a couple real teams. We got Oregon and Oregon State. Oregon State they lose to Washington in a raining, pouring game. Everyone knew that this game was going to be hard for either team. They only lost by 2 points. It was surprising, kind of in a sense of how was Oregon going to play? Were they going to be able to handle the time of possession? Yes. Were they going to be able to run the ball all over Washington? Not entirely. But when you lose the turnover battle, like we talked about earlier, especially in a game like that where you're not going to get as many chances to score when you don't capitalize, you're going to lose those games. Oregon, on the other hand, had a phenomenal week. First half, 6 touchdowns for Bo Nix, over 350 yards passing. Completely just dominated last week, made their opponent look trash as always, and how they have been making teams look the past couple of weeks. So that's why they're in our top 3. That's why they are a 13.5-point favorite against Oregon State, who was only a 1-point favorite over Washington last week, which should show you something if you're looking at this. Just my opinion. But I'm going to keep this short and simple. Is Oregon's offense going to stay on the clinic? Or are they going to fall susceptible to the rivalry that they have? And is it going to mess up how they've been playing recently? Brennan.
Yeah, Oregon is 7-3 in the last 10 in this. I think the spread's kind of nuts, to tell you the truth. 13.5. I mean, I do think Oregon's a very good team, obviously.
Huge.
But 13.5 is a big old
Pac-12
spread
bias.
for this rivalry, especially Oregon leaving. You know, it kind of goes back to that Oklahoma State-Oklahoma game Rich talked about a few weeks ago, you know, Battle of Bedlam. I think it's I don't know, that's a big spread for me to see, but if Oregon does what they do, they should win the game for sure. But they haven't lost this matchup at home since 2007. So I mean, it'd be a pretty big upset for Oregon State to pull this off. I don't know, man. I can't see it happening. We are high on Oregon. I hope for some reason, for Alabama's sake, it happens. But no, I mean, not much to say on this other than I think Oregon wins this game.
I'll tell you all this. I think, you know, if Oregon takes care of business the way they should, you know, Oregon State cannot play the same way they played against Washington to beat Oregon. They could stay, if Oregon stays hot and they do what they're supposed to do, this 13.5 spread is like on the dot, right? Even for a rivalry game. But, you know, there are some weird things. It's kind of a look ahead spot for Oregon. You know, everybody's been talking about this Washington game all year. You could be a little bit distracted by that. And, you know, maybe Oregon State comes in and sticks it to you. They don't have those turnovers and they just play good football and it's a close game. So, you know, rivalry weekend, I don't put anything for a lock, but you know, Oregon State has the chance to do the funniest thing this week, and that's just commit absolute chaos on the NCAA. And I think this is the chance for it. But if Oregon's as good as we say they are, and I think they are, their defense, offense, everything, they play complementary football, all of that, I think we should be seeing Oregon versus Washington championship weekend.
Let's get into this next game. I agree with you, Rich, though. I do think that those two teams, Oregon and Washington, obviously doesn't matter how that game played out, they were going to be going anyway. But I do think it's going to be, is Oregon looking ahead? And I think Dan Lanning comes from the Kirby Smart tree. I don't think he's going to be looking ahead too much. I think his players are going to be on the same page as him. Next we got Michigan, Ohio State, man. This is, I mean, what else could you ask for? I mean, it's every year you get a phenomenal matchup between these two teams. And before the past 2 years, Ohio State has dominated recently in this rivalry. Now, has Michigan been winning because of their sign stealing, or have they actually been the better team the past couple of years? I don't think they've been the better team, but I do think this weekend is going to tell a lot. Now, Michigan's only a 3-point favorite, but I think it's obviously. I think if you're Vegas, you know this is a pick'em game. You're giving the line to the home team. Whatever, I get that. But I don't think either team, as of right now, I don't think anyone knows exactly what this game's going to be. I think everyone is like kind of confused because is Michigan's offense going to be stalled out like they have been the past couple of weeks? Is JJ McCarthy going to come to life? Are they going to be able to start throwing the ball? Now, Ohio State, on the other hand, they've been on the ups in their offense. Kyle McCord has actually played pretty good football lately. He's been, I know, against inferior teams, of course, but their offense has kind of been rolling. And this is kind of a thing I wanted to talk about. And I did talk about early in the podcast a couple weeks ago. Ohio State's offense was looking lethargic as well. And then before Michigan's. Now Michigan's has kind of regressed and Ohio State's has taken a step forward. Where are we at? Are we going to meet in the middle? Are both teams going to regress and progress at the same time? How is this game going to turn out? Is it going to be a defensive battle? Is it going to be low scoring? Is it going to be high scoring? How's the game going to play out? So it's a tough game, man. I couldn't tell you what I thought on this game. I have no lean. I think it's going to be a phenomenal game just to watch and feel good about watching and not betting on. But I know Brennan has a bet on this one.
Oh yeah, definitely, baby. Yeah, I'm taking the Ohio State Buckeyes. I know we're talking about this later, but I think Ohio State has the edge here. I mean, like we've talked about, Michigan just hasn't looked that impressive, and I'm not going to say Ohio State's looked that impressive, but I know I talked about this in an earlier podcast. Is just the fact that Ohio State finally has a good defense that they can lean on, and to tell you the truth, I think they have more playmakers in the pass game to get them over the hump than Michigan would. Like we're talking about earlier, who can come from behind and win. I think Ohio State has that edge on a come from behind win more than Michigan does. I
agree.
Both of these, this is like the number one defense versus the number two defense. Michigan's run defense is much better than Ohio State's run is on offense. So, I mean, it's really going to be who can establish the run and make those 1-off, 2-off plays over the top. And who do I look at that has that wide receiver that can do that? Ohio State with Marvin Harrison Jr., who's going to make those plays that can win you the game. So, I mean, I know this is in Michigan. It's in the freaking one of the biggest stadiums in the biggest stadium in college football. So, we're one of them anyway. But no, I think at the end of the day, if a team has to win the game, I think it's going to be Ohio State. I'm not going to trust old JJ McCarthy in this one to make it come from behind win. So yeah, give me the Buckeyes.
Yeah. So I'm with Zach here on basically all of his points. I just love how Zach attributes everything that Michigan has done in the past 3 years to cheating. It's funny as hell. And he's not laughing about it. He's dead ass serious. I think, I think it's funny. Yeah, I think it's kind of true. Because, Michigan's going to go into this game without a head coach, so if you're going to give an advantage to that, it's obviously Ohio State. I think McCord has been coming around slowly. It's been a slow process with him, but Ohio State has the ability to call plays that are favorable to their quarterback. Mm-hmm. So, and they have the weapons around him to be able to do that. So I think if anybody is going to score in this game, like score, 20, 28 plus, it's going to be Ohio State. I haven't seen that from Michigan all season except playing their cupcake-ass schedule. And I don't think Ohio State is going to allow Michigan to push him around like they did last year. I think I watched – it was like the first half of the Ohio State-Michigan game last year, and it was all like long run plays, just like kind of like these power O plays, like where they're going right off the tackle, and they scored like 3 of them from at least 40 to 50 yards out. I don't think that's going to be the case this year. I don't think Ohio State's defense is soft. I think Ryan Day has made a emphasized effort on being able to stop those fucking run plays.
We're physical bunch.
That was just going through my head. It's Ohio against the world.
As much as I hate Ryan Day, I think this has got the players going.
It's the way he drops 3 in a row.
Yeah, no way he's going to drop 3 in a row, man. I mean, it's a rivalry. It's contested every single year. Yep. Beating a good team 3 times in a row without your head coach is hard to say the least. Let's talk about Kirby couldn't beat Saban if Kirby wasn't there. I just same thing as Georgia, Alabama, in my opinion.
Yeah. I don't know. There's a lot of things we could say on this one. I'm excited to talk about the recap on this and also for us to
Yeah.
watch it this weekend together. I think it's going to be a really, really good game to watch. On to Brennan's favorite game of the year. We are going to go with Bama Auburn.
Yeah, fuck.
Um,
Oh
It's
now,
my
my favorite
god.
game
now,
of the year when we're not playing in Jordan Hare, but when
very
we're
true,
playing in
very
Jordan
true.
Hare, buddy.
So you want to play in
The
Jordan
SEC
Hare,
championship is the favorite game of the year for him.
Yeah.
but
He loses
Auburn
every year.
Auburn has played up to last week, pretty decent. Their offense has been on the up and up. They've looked like a pretty good team. Hugh Freeze said, "Hey, we're going to start doing this. I know this works. Let's do it." I do think that there was a look ahead spot for them, and I think that they just completely did not look at New Mexico State seriously, and they said, "Hey, we have better players. We're going to go out and beat this team. We're going to beat their ass. They're not going to be able to scheme up enough shit to beat us. So we're going to go ahead and practice on Bama this week." And although you want to think, oh, this coach has to be smarter than that. Like he has to be smarter than to do that. Like there's no way he actually did that. I think that it's very plausible that he did do that, especially coming from his background and how he has been as a coach. I'm not going to put it past him to go ahead and just look ahead and go to Bama because I think they thought that they were going to beat the shit out of New Mexico State because it's not a Power 5 team and they're not really worried about them. So now they're on to Bama. They prepared. So Brennan, just let you know, they had 2 weeks of preparation for you guys, not one.
Yeah.
Um, and the other side of the coin is Bama has looked phenomenal the past couple of weeks, actually the whole back half of the season, and they've come along. And Jalen Milroe is looking more comfortable in the offense. The offensive coordinator looks like he's trusting him more. He's found out what Jalen Milroe can do, what he can't do. He's not putting him in situations to where he has to think too much. He's letting him be athletic and play. And that's what you have to do with those kind of guys. And I think Georgia did that the first season with Stetson. They didn't make him think too much. They just kind of let him play. So I think Jalen Milroe is doing the same thing right now, which I think is what they should have done from the get-go. You have an athletic guy who has not been in the offense long. He doesn't really understand exactly his reads that he's supposed to do. Let the guy go out there and just be athletic and let him play. And that's what they're doing now. And I feel like that's why the offense has progressed so much. And the defense looks really good as well. I mean, you got Dallas Turner and the other linebacker. What's his name? Starts with a B, right?
Braswell.
Braswell.
Yeah.
They've looked phenomenal. So I know, Brennan, you're going to have a lot to say on this one, but from my standpoint, I think 14.5 is a really good number for Bama.
Yeah, no, I mean, any time we play in Jordan Hare, there's some magic in the air. No way to explain it, dude. It doesn't matter if Auburn hadn't won a game all damn season. They're gonna show up to this game. Bama could be 11-0 rolling into this game. Auburn could be 0-11, and I would still be shit scared of what was gonna come out of this game. And and I know we were talking about it before the pod is. It makes it even worse that they just got their asses handed to them by New Mexico State last week because now they're going to
So
come
much
with
worse.
extra fire under their ass, ready to play this game. I mean, you're talking about, for example, Nick Saban is 4-4 in Jordan Hare at Alabama, which is crazy to think
Damn,
about.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, 4-4 in Jordan Hare at Alabama. I mean, 2021 with Bryce Young, we made it to the national championship that year, beat Georgia in the SEC championship. We were down 3-10 in the fourth quarter with a minute and a half to go on our own 1 yard line.
And you had to go
And we
99.
99 yards, tied that
remember
game up, ended up winning 22-10 in overtime. I mean,
But how do you
Damn, so if Saban is
Saban
is 4-4, y'all have been down at halftime a majority of the games then that y'all played at Jordan Hare.
Oh,
Yeah,
absolutely.
for sure.
I mean,
For sure.
the biggest one we have
That's
is
fucking crazy.
I think by 28 in Jordan Hare, and that was the year after they had won, after Auburn had won in 2010 national championship, and they won 2 games in 2011, and we beat them by like 28. But that, other than that, I think the biggest win we've had is like 16-point win. So, and even that year they won 6 games on the season, and we won the national championship that year. So it's like it doesn't even matter.
That's
where they are.
That makes me really reconsider the 14.5 for Bama because
it's crazy.
it's not like I haven't looked at these teams this year because I have.
Yeah.
But then you go ahead and you look at how Georgia played them as well, and Georgia only beat them by I think 7 or something close to that. And we were down in that game, so I don't know. It's a tough game for Bama every time you guys go and play. Especially in Jordan Hare. But I don't know, Rich, do you have anything on this one? It's It's kind of a
No,
toss-up for you.
no, I think Brennan makes some good points here. It's Auburn and Jordan Hare. So, I wanted to spend my entire segment or part of the segment making fun of Auburn because that's a fucking atrocious loss.
Yeah.
What is it,
But
31 to
1.85
10? That's
million
wild.
dollars.
Hugh Freeze was
$1.85 million dollars.
Hugh Freeze was probably betting on strippers at halftime or something, calling them up, like, "Hey, what's going on, man? I got after the game. Got to get ready for Bama." No, I think that loss was a big look ahead spot, and they paid $1.8 million to lose to a team that's 9-3. So, moral of the story is schedule better.
No,
If you,
no, that's not the moral story. It's don't look ahead to Bama when you have a
moral of the story is
really
schedule better. That
when you have a
motherfucking team is
well-coached team
9-3
coming
and they're
in.
good, man. Come on, they're like don't just write them off because they're New Mexico
Well,
State.
they're a well-coached team, and that's the thing. I remember the first time I watched them this season, I bet on them like one of the first weeks of the year, and I was like, "Oh shit, New Mexico State's kind of like really well-coached team,
Yeah,
like really
Well,
well-coached."
they
Which
schedule these
it's
games 4 or 5 years out, and I think 4
I
or
don't
5
give
years
a
exactly.
fuck.
ago, I don't think New Mexico State could win a football game 4 or 5 years ago. Like I
Yeah,
remember playing with them
Schedule
in NCAA
Chattanooga,
back
who
in the
you
day.
knew, regardless of what they went, if they went 10-0, like Alabama
Yeah,
did, they scheduled Chattanooga and they beat them
yeah,
like 100-0. I don't know.
yeah.
Schedule a team that you know is not going to fucking get good ever.
yeah. No, I agree. That makes sense. Um, but I
Fuck
think I
Auburn
think
though.
we have a huge week to look forward to when it comes to this game. I'm very excited to watch Auburn, Alabama, as
Mhm.
always. And Brennan, are they playing at 3:30 or 7:30?
Yeah, that's at 3:30, middle of the day,
Okay, so
CBS.
CBS is going. CBS.
Hmm.
Okay,
Yep.
awesome. So that'll be the last time we get
We're
Gary
gonna get
and
Gary. We're gonna get
Brad.
Gary. Yep, Gary
Yep,
and Brad.
of course, of course. I really am sad about
Yeah,
leaving Brad though. I don't give a shit about Gary though.
yeah, Gary
Let's
sucks.
go to this next game. We got Kentucky Louisville. Um, I mean, the reason why we wanted to kind of bring this up obviously is because Louisville is going to the ACC championship. Kentucky's had a pretty down year after a good start. Um, Louisville looked impressive last week against a secondary in Miami that has been impressive. So it's how are they going to come out in this game and how are they going to play against a Kentucky team who has looked pretty lethargic offensively, and how is Louisville's offense and quarterback exactly going to play against this Kentucky defense, who actually, I mean, whenever Georgia played them, I think that was one thing that we were kind of not worried about, but we knew exactly how Kentucky was going to play defensively and learned how to carve them up kind of. And is Louisville going to be able to do the same exact thing that Georgia did and play them into their zones? And I think that's going to be kind of what they do. I think Louisville's going to definitely try to get them in those deep over routes, some of those intermediate passes, and just kind of try to pick them apart and pick them down the field. And that quarterback is probably going to have a good day. Now, can he make some mistakes because
Mhm,
of Kentucky's line? I think Kentucky's defensive line, they have that number 0. He's really good. And then
mhm.
they have another guy on there that's really good, really big guys. Now, are they going to be able to make some mistakes and make Louisville make some mistakes? Probably. And Louisville's probably not going to be able to run the ball all over them. But let's see how Louisville's offense does against an SEC opponent.
Yep.
Yeah,
Against an SEC team, even though they're
exactly.
a 6-5 team. Let's watch them because they played a Virginia team that's a very, very um, mediocre slash
Mhm.
like bad team, and they played them really close. So let's see.
And they lost to Pitt.
You can't let a Kentucky team stay in the game
Yeah.
because they do have a pretty decent quarterback who's just had a down year. So I don't know, Brennan. What do you think on this one?
No, that was exactly the point I was going to bring up. As SEC fans, we always harp on, oh, a middle of the pack SEC team could beat a good ACC team any day of the week. So it's gonna. I mean, I know it's kind of a down year for SEC
Right.
overall, but
But
Kentucky is
Brennan
one
don't
of
give a
those teams
shit.
where
Bama's got to get in the
Kentucky.
playoffs. You don't give a shit.
Hey, I want Kentucky to beat Louisville for sure. But no, the problem is surprisingly enough, Louisville has the 11th best run defense in the country. They can stop the run, man.
Okay.
That is pretty surprising. And Kentucky is one of those teams that kind of has to establish the run to create pass plays over the top. So yeah, I mean, Louisville's defense only gives up 3.3 yards per rush. Kentucky's 83rd in rush yards per game. So, I mean, they get 5.1 yards per run. So it'll be basically, I think Louisville stops the run, can create those third down situations for Kentucky that they can't get through. They could easily win this game, but Kentucky has won the last 4 by an average of 30.5 points. I'll tell you that. That's pretty crazy. But now I think Louisville's looking good this year. It's a look ahead game for them. This is one of those look ahead games. They're ready for the ACC championship, and
everybody's been talking Louisville, Florida State.
Never look past an SEC opponent that can beat you on that front seven. There's just big old bullies as always. So I think this is going to be a much better game than people might think it will be. What do you think about it, Rich?
Yeah, I agree with you, Brennan. I think this is going to be a lot closer. I think the 7 spread's a little far off from what it could be. I think Louisville could get bullied this game. I think they're in a look-ahead spot. Everybody's been talking about that Florida State game. Plummer just came off a really good game. So is he that, or is he, he's going to regress to the mean? He's going to be what he was before that. So I think if he regresses, they lose the game, personally. I think Kentucky's played a lot of good teams this year, and they know how to keep up with good opponents. And I don't think, I don't know if Louisville is up to the task, the same spot as those opponents. I think those opponents that Kentucky's played are at least a little bit better than Louisville. For example, I think they played Georgia this year. Did they play Bama this year? They played Bama this year.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that was when Bama was getting hot too. Yeah. So I think, Kentucky's played a lot of good teams, so it's kind of scary for Louisville. If Louisville takes care of business, this is another quality win, just like the Miami one. Even though the records are bad, it's still a quality win if they do win this game, and it'll make them look better going into that Florida State matchup, in my opinion.
No, yeah.
Well, in their mind, they might be thinking, hey, if we beat the shit out of Kentucky and then go and beat the hell out of Florida State, why not us?
What about our playoff? Yeah,
contention 4 spot. I mean, they might be looking to try to prove themselves, which I don't think would ever happen.
Remember, I know that I don't think that's a possibility of happening. But remember, a couple weeks ago, I think it might have been last week or the week before, I brought up, hey, what if Louisville wins out? Do they get in with the one loss? And everyone kind of shot me down as that it's not even a possibility. But now we're here in the last week of the season. They're still they still have that one loss, and they're going into a Kentucky team, and then they have the Florida State game at the end of the season. I don't think they're going to get in the playoff no matter what they do, even if they beat the shit out of both teams. But they would get into a New Year's Six, which would be an extreme progression for that program. Absolutely. And would help them recruiting wise in the future. But I don't know.
But Zach, I also think you're right in that point where if they do win out and they do beat the shit out of both of these teams, how good does that look? Granted, their loss looks really bad, but beating the shit out of these two teams, and they beat Miami.
You'd have to have I think Georgia would have to beat Alabama.
Oregon State would have to beat Oregon. Washington State would have to beat Washington. Yeah.
You'd have to have it's a long shot. It's a long shot, yes. But okay, so scenario: Oregon beats Washington. Well, no, we don't even need Auburn. We just need.
You do.
Yeah, you just
Auburn
need Bama. Bama beats Georgia.
You have one loss. Think about this. You have one loss. So Georgia beats Bama straight up. Michigan or Ohio State win. Who gives a fuck? Oregon beats Washington. That 4th slot, right? That 4th slot is Texas if Texas doesn't win out, or if Texas wins out. If Texas loses and you beat Florida State and Alabama's lost, it's Oregon, then who?
Yeah, but
that's true. Yeah, I mean,
I think the committee would still put Georgia in as a one-loss non-conference champion
over Louisville as a Power 5.
Yeah,
they would assume so.
For sure.
I don't know. Georgia's close.
It would be Georgia's only loss would be to Bama, and as long as they didn't get blown out and they got beat.
It's depending on like I said. Yeah, you still need the Georgia to get blown out at the end.
Hey, we need Tech to beat Georgia. How about that?
If that happens, if that happens next week on the podcast, that's a game of the week recap, and that's I'm talking the entire time. I'm gonna be at
I
a
don't
whole
think Zach would be on the
literally-
podcast.
I
Zach
literally
would
will
be on the
not show up.
podcast.
I wouldn't show
Yeah.
up. I
On
quit.
the podcast, we're gonna have a picture of Zach with a gun to his head on the side.
Oh yeah.
Let's
All
go
right, last
into
game,
let's go
baby.
into another game that could shake up the college football playoff, especially with a quarterback out. We got Florida State and Florida kind of going at it in that rivalry game. I'm excited to see this Florida State game kind of back to where it used to be, where these teams are playing. At least one of them is in a really good spot. You got Florida State and Florida kind of flipped now. Like Florida State's on the up and Florida's on the down. They have been for a little while now, but it is cool to see how good Florida State is doing and how good they've been doing. Now, the only question is, okay, how is Florida State going to play without their quarterback? And I know we talked about this earlier. Okay, if Florida State plays this game close with Florida and they only win by a field goal last second, if they win by a touchdown, how good does that look to the committee? And obviously they would stay out at 5, but could they move down to 6? Could they move down to 7 with a really, really close win here against Florida? Now I know it is like the spread's only 6.5, right? So it's not like astronomical for them to only win by 3. And of course, if they lose, they're completely out. They wouldn't get in. There's no chance, even if they beat Louisville in the ACC championship. But these kind of things are fun to talk about. You get to see if Florida is going to actually rise up to the occasion and play good. They played a Missouri team last week that is a top 10 team now in the college football playoff really well. And Missouri won on a last-second field goal. So, and I think Missouri's a really good team, especially their defense. And I think Florida played really well last week. They played well above their average and how they've played recently in this whole season. So, I mean, dude, Florida could be bowl eligible. That's what they're fighting for. And for Billy Napier to keep his job, I think he needs to either be bowl eligible or stay in this game at least a little bit.
That's what they're really fighting for. You're right.
You're playing against a backup quarterback too. So your boosters now are saying, dude, you couldn't even compete against this backup quarterback with the talent we brought in last year and the talent we're going to bring in next year. Like, I think it's a big statement for Billy Napier is if he can coach these guys up and get these guys ready to play in this big game to go be bowl eligible and play in the Tax Slayer Bowl, even though it doesn't mean shit. It's still
play against Georgia Southern so you can bet on them.
But dude, yeah, exactly. No, but it's still such a huge thing for this team.
Exactly,
It's still such a huge thing because I know a lot of people aren't thinking about that, but these guys are fighting for something. They're fighting for a bowl game. As Florida State, you did not want Florida to have any motivation coming to this game, except for that in-state rivalry. That's going to be a motivation no matter what. But now they also have an added motivation of being a bowl eligible team, and your quarterback got hurt.
You out. And knocking you out of the college
and
football
knocking you
playoff.
out of the playoff. So there's a lot of things that come into this and a lot of factors that come into this. Brennan, I know you wanted to talk about this earlier because this is pretty big for your team. So what do you have for this one?
No, I mean, definitely. I didn't even think about the whole bowl game situation. I saw that record pop up and I said, oh, shit, that's another added on layer to this game. I mean, Florida fighting for that bowl spot. I mean, that's big time for recruiting. Let's not forget this too. I don't know if you saw this, but Graham Mertz, Florida starting quarterback, got hurt last week. They're starting a redshirt freshman, Max Brown. So I think the difference in this game is
but he played good.
This is a night game in the swamp. I mean, I know a lot of people have talked about night games in the swamp are not easy. And I'll tell you, Tate Rodemaker, in his career, he's 56 of 93 with 7 tutties and 5 picks. If you're throwing as many picks as you're throwing touchdowns in this game in the swamp at 7 at night, I don't know how that game's looking for you. So
you got to take this crowd out of it.
And it's really, it's really just what Florida team. We could say this every week. What Florida team are we going to get? I mean, there's times this season where Florida's just showed up and been like, "Holy hell, they're a good football team," and then they play the next weekend and we're like, "What a joke of a football team." So it's. What team are we going to get? But, man, I really do think my thought process on this now, seeing that record and them going for a bowl game, that's scary for Florida State and that young quarterback. So I'm excited. I'm actually a lot more excited to watch this one now than I was before. Might have to take old Gators plus 6.5.
and then you get to watch this Florida State team and see how like how they're going to play against an inferior opponent, of course.
Yeah.
But how are they going to play? Are they going to rise to the occasion? Are they going to come in ready to play? I know these guys are going to come in. Mike Norvell is going to get these guys ready to play. They're going to have that chip on their shoulder, but so is Florida. So how are you going to play in this environment? They already played at Clemson, and they played a hard road game against those guys and won in overtime.
Yeah.
So don't get me wrong. These guys are used to playing in this kind of situation. But their offense is different now. It's a whole new offense. You don't have that quarterback that can take you 30 yards on a run real quick.
Yeah, Rich, I know you had mentioned earlier, like, hey, they went up. They were down 13-0 and then scored 58 straight against North Alabama. That was North Alabama. How do you think this quarterback fares in the swamp?
But also let's look at that spot a little closer when we talk about this game. You're down 13-0. Your quarterback just broke his leg in half, which football nowadays, somebody would fucking stop the game. There'd be one game that would be stopped out of 10 because of that injury. And I just think that it's not awful for a backup quarterback to come in there and hang 58 on the team right after that happens. I mean,
the team's hyped up for their quarterback. They're like, "Oh, we got to fucking play for him." Like
either that or they're scared. I mean, there's two situations you can come out of that. Like two ways you can come out of that situation, and they came out and they wanted to beat ass. So maybe that quarterback hyped him up. Maybe the rest of the year is for Jordan. So who has meant something to that Florida State franchise or that Florida State program in the past 3 or 4 years, maybe 5. I don't know. That motherfucker's been in college for a while, but I think, roster wise, it seems the recruiting class has been about the same the last couple of years. Florida's obviously performing way under what they should have been performing this year.
Florida State also got some good transfers though too. So Florida State hit the transfer portal pretty well, and they landed big time guys.
Coleman.
Exactly. Yeah, but you're talking just the recruiting classes are pretty close. I would say, Florida State definitely has the head coach advantage in this scenario. It depends. Do they try to run the same offense they ran with Jordan, or are they going to adjust to their new quarterback?
They're going to have to adjust.
They're going to have to adjust, right? This quarterback can't throw as well, and they have to they have to make the turnover. They have to get the turnovers to be a lot less than they have been. So we'll see. I think it's a really good spot for Florida.
You have to disrupt this quarterback if you're Florida. This guy gets happy feet.
And they can do that, I think.
He gets happy feet, and that's why he has almost the same amount of picks as he does touchdowns. He gets happy feet, he gets a little nervous in the pocket, and he just throws some shit real quick.
But Jordan did that early in his career too. Everybody forgets Florida State was like 4-9 the other year, or some bullshit like that. Like Florida State was bad the other year because this quarter, like Jordan would throw a bunch of picks. So this guy could come out and be a world beater the next 2 games, and we're not talking about this game anymore. We're talking about them being in the playoff. It's just what kind of motivation does Florida State come out to beat them? Because I think they have the advantage. I think Florida's a bad team this year, but it is a tale of 2 stories, like Brennan said. What Florida team do we get? Do we get the one that can play Missouri at Missouri, or do we get the one that just bends and folds to Georgia when they play them in a big rivalry game in Jacksonville?
Yep.
Depends.
It's a tough one, but that's why we play these games, is to decide
it's college football, baby.
And that's what college football is all about. Now to our could be our favorite segment, could not be, depending on how you look at it. We got our best bets of the week, man. Hey, records are not looking hot, but I will say
I got
this.
my first dub.
Hey, I'll say this right here. You don't have to worry about
Brennan's on the heater right now.
Again. Yeah, he is, because he bet Georgia -10, which was a phenomenal pick, and I told him when he did it. I just can't bet with my team. I can't do that. I have never been able to do that. But I mean, I took Clemson -6.5. I thought that was a really good spot for them. They ended up coming out on top. They won by 11. UNC almost covered that game. I don't know if y'all saw it. They almost scored with a minute or something left, ended up not scoring, and Clemson covered. So that was a tough one. I had to actually sweat that one out when I thought it was going to be an easy dub. Georgia Southern loses, doesn't help me out at all. So I fall to 2-4. still have the best record among the boys here. But
there's not a lot of podcasts you could say that on, man.
yeah, exactly. Not a lot of podcasts you could say that on. But
Hey, you
it
can
was a
compete
tough
with that
week.
guy on College Game Day. That guy's awful.
Hey, listen, me and Stanford Steve are boys, okay?
Yeah.
We're boys.
Yeah.
We all dude, I see him making bets that I've made, and I'm like, oh fuck. Oh, God, no way. I start sweating and shit. I'm like, no, Stanford, put it on the other side.
Zach, but
So
your bets at least were sweaters. Mine were fucking just both blowouts. The shit I said last week ended up not even being close to true. Chip Kelly came out wanting to get his job back, so he blew out USC.
dude, I told you that game. I told you UCLA was probably going to win that game. I said
no,
it. I said,
but we were all talking before that show. I remember saying that this is a good spot for Caleb Williams to prove his Heisman worth, and we're all anti Caleb Williams again. I hope he falls number 35 in the draft, second round. Don't give a shit. He's not good enough to do that. And then we're gonna see the Utah. I don't need Arizona's just on a heater, man.
Yeah.
If you're gonna bet anybody, bet Arizona.
No,
that's
dude,
fucking
that's
ugly.
also a thing that was tough about that pick and why the spread was so low is because Arizona's just been on a ride. Their offense has
fucking
been
heater, man.
Dude, their offense is just clicking right now. So when you picked Utah, especially with how Utah has been kind of on a downswing, in my opinion, that's how I got a little.
But the other part of that is you'll see a lot of these teams get on like hot streaks, and then they're college kids, so eventually they got to come down, right? And if they're playing for a hot streak on 5 or 6 weeks in a row, you'll see them play a Utah and then be like, what the fuck? They got the shit beat out of them by Utah. It's the same thing with Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State was playing on that's what I was betting off of. Oklahoma State was playing on a 5 or 6 game heater, and they go to UCF. Yeah, and then they go to UCF and get their ass beat, which me and Brennan were.
Well, UCF's offense is actually really good this year. Y'all should have known that with how they played Oklahoma. They played Oklahoma pretty well.
Yeah, but Oklahoma
What do we got this week? What do we got this week, boys? Let's
go to the next week. Fuck this week.
I think whose picks are we going with first?
We gotta switch up the mojo. So let's go with Zach's.
I'll go with mine.
Let's go Beach.
Yeah. So Zach can close out the show as always.
Yeah, we'll go Brennan. We'll go Brennan and Rich, and then hit me last.
Give me the Missouri Tigers, baby. -7.5. I mean, I just don't know why this number is where it's at. Arkansas, awful. I mean, I guess they did just have a weird game with Florida, but like we said, Florida's one of those teams that show up here. They don't show up there. Missouri is just a good football team. They're ranked where they are for a reason. They've played good football all season. Arkansas is a hit or miss 1 out of 10 times. They show up one game out of 10 and play a good game this season. So I think Missouri is their coach is just on a tear right now to prove that they're one of the better teams in college football and they got a future to look forward to and trying to get some more recruits their way. I think they just got a really big recruit flip recently, if I'm not mistaken. I know you're much better on that, Zach, than I am.
Yeah, they're doing really good on the recruiting show with wide receivers, especially.
Then we're taking old Ohio State Buckeyes +3.5, baby. I mean, there's no way Michigan wins this game by more than 3. I mean, I think Ohio State's going to win outright. I'll probably throw money line on them, but just to take the safe route, I'll take Ohio State Buckeyes, baby. There's no way Ryan Day's dropping 3 in a row to the Wolverines. Especially like Zach would say, they can't cheat anymore, motherfuckers. So give me the Buckeyes. Give me Marvin Harrison in a big game. Give me by 7. Buckeyes by 7.
Oh, shit. We're picking lines ourselves now.
Yeah.
All right, go ahead and throw my picks up there. I'm getting my quote of the week up. Adversity builds character, and character takes you places money can't. And T.I. said this quote, so it was a great quote by T.I. We're gonna go into the picks now. We got TAMU +11.5. If you look at these rosters, there's no reason that TAMU should be this big of an underdog. I understand that Jaden Daniels is competing for a Heisman candidate, but I just think with the rosters that TAMU can be able to cover this spread at least like 7. So, I think LSU wins this game, but I don't think it's by more than 2 touchdowns. 2 touchdowns at all. So we'll see. But then I think UNC minus 2.5. So this is a controversial pick, at least with Zach. But I think Drake May is the better quarterback here, and I think NC State has kind of been playing above their heads. Their defense has been holding very, very strong, and Drake May has the ability to beat it. So we'll see how good he really is. He's not been having a great season, and he's apparently one of the top 2 quarterbacks in the nation. So I think he needs to prove it.
Yep.
Caleb Williams proved me wrong last week, so please, God, Drake May, can we please turn the fuck up and be a top 2 quarterback right here?
I'll tell you, the NC State defense is stout at home, buddy. That is
They're really good at home, but Drake May needs to go out on top.
I agree with you. He's definitely got something to prove going into the draft. So I think he has a really big game.
Please, God, man.
I like your guys' picks this week. Obviously, don't
right.
love
First Zach pick. Wait. I'll pick
pick.
it for you, Zach. I'll pick it for you. Georgia Southern. Go ahead and load it up.
No. I already told y'all. I'm done with them. I'm done. Get them out of here. I'm done. I told y'all I was going to ride with them until they cover. I actually figured that 3 of the 4 losses I have are because of Georgia Southern, so fuck them. I'm going with Texas minus 13 right here. You can get them at 12.5 at some places, but I did not get them at 12.5. I got them at 13. Want to be honest with you guys, but if that line starts to obviously move down towards the 12.5, I definitely would get it. I still like it at 13, but that's where I got it. So it's kind of where we're at right now. And then Ole Miss minus 10. They're playing a really, really, really bad Mississippi State team.
Mm-hmm.
I love Lane Kiffin here to kind of make a statement with his win. I know they just got blown out by Georgia a couple weeks ago. Obviously, they're not going to want to end their season with people thinking that about their team, especially Lane Kiffin with how he plays. And I think Lane Kiffin also might be kind of eyeing that Texas A&M job pretty heavily. So it's a tough spot for me, but I do think he's trying to impress right here. And I think he's going to take his boys minus 10. And I think that's a easy dub, in my opinion.
Yeah. And another point on the Texas game, if it starts going up like 13.5, I would grab it at 13.5 because, I mean, if it's starting to go up, they're obviously favoring Texas a little more than the line there suggests.
They're in a spot that they got to prove themselves too, man. I mean,
exactly.
Texas has not played great these past, which I know they didn't have Quinn Ewers for 2 of the games, but they have not played Texas football that wants to get in the playoff recently, so they got something to prove down the stretch here. And
this is a huge thing for the teams to do in the ending of the season, especially in this rivalry week. You want to make statements. I mean, I think a lot of these teams are going to try to do that. So look for Ole Miss and UT to cover their spreads. Also, if you want to bet with Brennan and Rich, those are their picks as well.
Let's have a winning week on the pod,
dude. I think, I feel really, really confident this week, especially in my picks. But I'll say this, dude, it's a blast having these conversations with you guys every week about the college football playoff and some of the upcoming games and recapping it. Obviously, we want to make some money here, but this obviously isn't a betting podcast. We love just college football in general. So if you guys want to bet, do it. Only bet what you have. Don't bet what you can't lose, But every podcast is going to be posted on Wednesday at 11 a.m. And then don't forget to check out our NFL podcast that also comes out Thursdays at 12 noon. So give your boys a look on that and go ahead and click the subscribe button. Like, comment. This is how we get more views on these videos, guys. We want to keep making content for you and be on the lookout for some merch in the future because we are coming out with some of that as well. But it was good, boys.
Another point, Zach, just before we leave, if y'all have any questions you want to ask or any points you want to make, maybe if you put them in the comments, we may feature them one week. So
of course.
Question of the week.
We may answer them, or question of the week kind of shit. We're relatively new, so we might add something to the podcast eventually. So if you have a question you want to ask or a point you want to make, we'll put it up here and maybe argue it one of these weeks. So just
any segment you guys want to do, we are open to that. But it was good hanging out with y'all boys. We will see you guys next week.
Yep. See y'all Rivalry weekend, baby.
Come on.
Come on.